Good afternoon, everybody. I'm calling today's meeting to order at 1:04 p.m. on September 22nd, 2023. And thank you for all attending. I want to welcome Derek Doty, Town Supervisor here in North Elba, Nancy Battaglia, our roving photographer. We're welcoming board members in person and remotely via video conference. To our public viewers, thanks also for joining. Please note this board meeting is being videotaped. A link to the video and transcription will be posted on the Olympic Authority website following the meeting. As we start today's items, I will remind board members to speak as clearly as possible and to identify yourselves. It's time you speak to make a motion. An agenda is included in your board package. And Emily, could you please call the roll to confirm a quorum is present?
Joe Martens.
Here.
Bill Beanie. Cliff Donaldson.
Here.
Excellent.
Frank Cardinale.
Here.
Steve Hunt.
Here.
Betty Little. Here. Art Lucy.
Here.
Diane Monroe.
Here.
Andy Fife.
Here.
Thanks, Andy. Joe Zalewski.
Here.
And Eleanor Tatum.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. We have a quorum. First item for the board action on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes. We have a motion. Could I have a motion approving the minutes of the board meeting held on August 20, 2023?
So moved.
Second by Cliff.
Seconded by Cliff. Any discussion or comments about the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the executive committee report, which I will report on. So in today's executive committee meeting, we discussed the electricity and supply agreements for the authority. And there are resolutions for procuring both on today's board agenda. As we all have heard from Mike several times over the last year, both commodities have been subject to recent cost increases due to lots of catastrophes around the country, just a very tight market generally and a host of other factors. But these are obviously necessary purchases for ORDA to make, and we're confident after hearing the very detailed description in the committee meeting that ORDA staff is working very diligently with some experts for working on our behalf to get the best possible prices. And ORDA has taken a number of steps to help reduce those prices where possible, but provide the proper protection for all of the assets that we own. The executive committee reviewed the process for both insurance and electricity supply purchasing and recommends that the board approve both associated resolutions as presented. We also reviewed the 2024-25 budget, 2023-2028 financial plan, which ORDA is required to advertise during the fall months before it is presented to the full board in December. And I want to thank particularly Peggy and her team for the work in the finance office in preparing the annual budget and plan, and also just generally for the work that they've done on the finances at ORDA. We'll hear a bit more about that later, but we've really come light years in how we manage our resources internally. And Peggy and the finance shop have done a terrific job. The committee did identify actually Art Lucy identified one small edit, which Peggy is going to make to one of the figures, which we'll note before we consider the resolution. Then the document, once approved, will be advertised for 30 days as required. Lastly, I want to reiterate not only my congratulations for Peggy and Mike on the investment report, which we had a view of at the end of the meeting. It is really, again, we've come light years at ORDA. Excellent work to both you and your teams. Thank you. And that is the executive committee report. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, I will move on to the Governance Committee report, which I will also provide because our chair, Chris Pushkart, was not available for the meeting today. So in today's Governance Committee meeting, we reviewed an expanded range of employees that will fall under a revised background check policy. These primarily concern new staff, particularly those focused in areas concerning technology, financials, or handling money and confidential information. Thank you, Michelle and your team, Ed and others, for your diligent policy work. And the committee recommends that the board approve the amendments to the policy and proposed resolution 509. It really just brings everyone that ought to be subject to a background check into that sphere, because we obviously need to be extremely diligent with the employees that handle money or confidential information. And I think now we have a very up-to-date policy. We also discussed a framework for the evaluation process for the new president and CEO. And thanks to the committee for your input on that. And our next step is to develop a draft that was shared just as basically an outline to the committee. And we will obviously work not only with the rest of the board, but the new president and CEO to finalize that so that we have a robust evaluation process that will take place over the course of the next year and annually every year thereafter. And then finally, and related to that evaluation process, the committee also reviewed an amended resolution for the appointment of the president and CEO. The start date was updated to September 14th. So Ashley has officially started. The committee also agreed on recommending a starting salary of $195,000 and 3 weeks vacation time during the first year. Upon board approval of those items, that would be applied to draft resolution number 508. And that is the Governance Committee report. Is there any questions? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on. The next item on the agenda are the President's report and the resolutions. I believe I am going to turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, well, thanks, Joe. We're going to start right off with a new business. And your resolution 508, followed up by resolution 509.
Okay. So could I have a motion to adopt resolution 508? I'm sorry, I hesitated there. I wanted to make sure I had the correct number. It's resolution 508, the resolution amending approval of the appointment of the president and CEO, as I just described in the Governance Committee report. Could I have a motion? I think that was that Cliff?
No.
Who was that?
Frank.
Frank, thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second, Diane.
Seconded by Diane. So obviously the information was provided in the Governance Committee report. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Or is there any further discussion? Okay, may I have a motion to amend resolution 508 with the following changes: a starting salary of $195,000 and 3 weeks of vacation in the first year.
So moved, Cliff.
Second, Art.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And it did carry unanimously. Okay, could I have a motion to adopt?
Joe, excuse me, that was on the amendment. Now you have to make a motion on the resolution 508 as amended
Okay,
to vote on it.
Went backwards.
okay.
That's
All in favor of an amendment to resolution 508
The resolution as amended.
as amended?
I'll move that.
Second.
Moved by Diane, seconded by Ellie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. So now we are on to resolution 509. A resolution adopting amendments to the background check policy, which we discussed also during the governance committee report.
I'll make a motion, Betty.
Can I have a second?
Art.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we're back to Mike for the president's report. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Can all the members that are telecommuting here see the screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, we can't see you right now, so that's why we didn't know who was talking before. But great, this was taken, some pictures taken right after our June board meeting at Whiteface with the rededication of Whiteface Mountain by the 10th Mountain Division. Pretty special, but up in the upper left is Colonel Don Dew, longtime Whiteface instructor who led the adaptive skiing efforts. And he was on hand and helped celebrate. And you can see our chair in the bottom right. So it was a pretty special time, and it kicked off our summer. We had a really robust summer at Bel Air. They did fantastic with a Friday evening music series, as well as some nighttime movies down at the beach, including Jaws, and some educational efforts promoting, the rules of hiking and just trying to be part of the front country solution, avoiding a lot of backcountry problems. Gore and Whiteface did the same thing. They both had some challenging summers with the weather. Gore had a nice music festival the end of August, and Whiteface has been pretty steady, but the numbers have been fluctuating based on the weather. The ski jumps in Mount Van Hovenberg were also busy. The summer bobsled rides with a new fleet of pneumatic tired sleds has done okay. We've got some learn to luge programs there. And of course, the zip line at the ski jumps did very well. The Olympic Center was the big beneficiary of these weather blips where everybody ran from Main Street right inside, took advantage of it. But the bottom right, nice photo of our adult figure skating week. The retail store, certainly have had some hockey and even mixed in a little bit of curling. So these results were pretty dramatic. I wanted to just show some growth year over year to show you how nice our summer did. And, the ski jumps retail was up over 40%. The Mount Van Hovenberg emissions were up dramatically, over 70%. The coaster rides were up. I think the last two line items, the retail store and the museum and the Olympic Center, we were basically comparing to zero revenue and visitation last year. So what we did is to give us a real comparison to see what our investments produced. Those numbers compare to the numbers from 2019. And you can see how dramatic the growth has been from 2019 to now in those little subsectors of profit centers. But it's, the pie chart, I think, is just showing you where all the summer revenue is coming from. And of course, the smallest wedge there is Gore Mountain, where we've committed a big investment in a project to have a robust summer operation there. So we're really targeting a lot of the issues that were inhibiting some of our successes in the past. Now we're starting our third year of operating the retail. We're going into our second winter of operating the rental shops at the ski areas. And now with, having a more robust operations for the summer, it's gonna make us more sustainable year round, give us a chance to market more year round and really be a bigger piece of the puzzle consistently. A nice visit from Senator Gillibrand. Gave a brief tour of the Olympic Center, and the Olympic Center staff did a tremendous job helping us out with that tour, and including through the museum where Julia did a nice job leading that effort. And it's so many special stories, and we did a really nice job articulating a few of them. We had a lot of press over the summer. Most of it was centered around getting a new president and CEO. And Ashley, take over from here for a little bit.
Okay. Well, right on the heels of or in addition to some of the summer activities that we saw at the venues, the conference center was extremely busy. They held a number of conferences, just a few highlights on here. The Department of Labor hosted their annual conference, and in addition, the Mayor's Conference, which had over 400 participants and 40 exhibitors. And then next week, we head right into the ski areas of New York. They'll be holding their expo. And in addition to the sessions and programs that they run at the Olympic Center, there will additionally be trainings at Whiteface Mountain to participate in. So lots of very good things happening at the conference center as well. In addition to the conference center and following up on the summer activities, we're firing right up with the fall activities. So starting this weekend at Mount Van Hovenberg, we have the keys to the castle. Whiteface at Oktoberfest at Whiteface is set for the weekend of September 30th. Both Gore and Bel Air are hosting Harvest and Fall Fest, which will be the first weekend of October. Flaming Leaves returns again October 6th to 7th, and the Olympic Center rounds out the fall festivities with the fancy figure skating event October 4th through the 8th. So lots of action happening at all of the venues.
Flaming Leaves, for those that don't know.
Flaming Leaves is an ongoing ski jumping event that's hosted at the Olympic Jumping Complex.
Thanks.
Yes. And throughout all of the seasons, there's obviously athlete training happening at the venues. This is the time of year where we'll start to see the increasing activity at the venues with the athlete programs. Currently, there are programs in-house with bobsled, luge, skeleton, ski jumping, cross country, and Nordic combined. And this is a great time with all of the fall events for visitors to be able to see some of the athletes that are working their way up through the performance levels, competing firsthand. So a great time for visitors to experience something they can't see anywhere else in the world. Then moving along with the major event schedule, it's really the winter series is kicking off November 12th with the North American Cup for bobsled and skeleton. There's a number of amazing events that are being hosted throughout the winter, but 3 World Cup events to highlight: World Cup bobsled skeleton, World Cup luge, and then World Cup ski jumping is returning for its second year, February 9th and 10th. So another exciting fall and winter ahead for all of our venues.
Thanks, Ashley. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our environmental initiatives and collaborations. Just a couple of weeks ago, we hosted a great event at Mount Van Hovenberg with a lot of the environmental organizations that we work with, as well as park agency representatives. We reviewed all 4 of our facilities in the forest preserve, looked at different stages of completions through our unit management plans, where we're at, different collaborations. But the Adirondack Wild was represented, the Mountain Club, Protect the Adirondacks, the Catskill Center, the Adirondack Center, and the Park Agency. So it's a really nice opportunity. I think one of the other nice collaborations that we're doing is out at Mount Van Hovenberg, where we're working with DEC's rangers very regularly. And the original biathlon center is kind of their headquarters for any search and rescues or operations in the high peaks, and we're cooperating with those people, trying to make them as effective and efficient as possible. They also work any of their helicopter operations out of there. And in a future unit management plan amendment, they would like to be included in that process for some enhancement of assets in the form of space to operate. I think one of our big success stories that, we talk about here in these couple of these resolutions coming up with our diesel fuel purchases and our electricity purchases, we removed a couple more fuel tanks this summer, and that makes 27 fuel tanks that we've removed from service in the last 6 years. So it's been really dramatic, just changing our building systems over to propane or electric, and getting rid of the diesel fuel. And that's just had a great impact. Also eliminating all diesel compressors from our operations of snowmaking. We got a lot of construction going on at our facilities. The new lift at Whiteface is called the Notch. That one, they're stringing the cable this week, I think, and trying to get in a position where we can start tensioning it, getting the comm lines up and start hanging chairs. But it's going to be a huge improvement. There's a view from the top terminal with the new mid-station Legacy Lodge. And behind it is the little Whiteface lift. So it's been since the winter of 2000 that since you could get to the mid-station lodge by a direct lift, and now we're going to be able to do it again. But it's going to make have a good backup secondary operation to the summit in the summertime if we're working on the gondola. But it's also because you can go right from the unloading of this new lift and go right across to the little Whiteface lift. In the wintertime, it's going to become a premier distribution lift as well as enhancement to the Bear Den area and the lower level terrain. While we were doing that, we regraded the power line area that's coming into Bear Den, and we reversed the slope so that now it comes back towards the lodge. And for about 300 feet, and we're going to reinstall one of our conveyor lifts in that location. It's going to be a private, very secure area for the Learn to Ski, and should work out really nicely. We've also completed bringing our secondary water line to the summit, replacing a line that was unreliable. This is going to improve the operations dramatically, and if there is a problem with a primary line, gives us opportunities to continue production and turn a catastrophe into an inconvenience. And you can see the truckload of new tower guns. Again, these are the LED guns of the industry, very efficient, and have been working tremendously well. If you remember last year when Whiteface opened up, we had a 6-day window to make snow, and we opened up the summit, the earliest ever, in 6 days of snowmaking, and our new systems are working incredibly well. This is kind of a before and after picture, some of our work on the castle, and Andy, Parks Rec, Historic Preservation has been incredibly supportive. As you can see in the inset picture on the top left, there's a chimney on the castle. And this was something that we couldn't seal the weather out of the facility. We were constantly fighting incursions of water. The average annual temperature at this location is 32 degrees. And we removed the chimney from that castle, have sealed it all up much nicer, and are thinking that we're going to be able to maintain that historic asset much better because of that.
Just a question. That will help the elevator that takes the handicapped up to the.
No, this
The
is
elevator, the lift that gets them up the steps. when they go into the
It-
castle, the water damage used to make it so it was
Right.
working half the time.
Yeah, at the castle, we're correcting that water damage and we're trying to make that easier. We do have more plans in the future to address the accessibility access there, including bathroom improvements that are needed. But it's kind of been a baby step. If you remember, just a couple of years ago, we tried to replace a window and a entire masonry wall collapsed on us. So we've been trying to make sure that the whole asset is secure before we can take care of some of the other problems that we know about.
Well, it used to say handicapped entrance and then, all the way down, then there were 7 steps to get into
To the elevator, then you're
but
talking.
it wasn't.
But so that goes to the roundhouse, not the castle.
Okay.
And that one we corrected and there's very consistent access. We had to actually remove the rock at the bottom of the old elevator and lower it for the modern equipment so that we could come straight in. And that has been very successful from the grade point of view. We've really struggled with removing all the water that's coming in there still. So there's troughs that are built down the sides and we're putting in redundant pump systems for the bottom of that pit because it doesn't drain by gravity. So at Bel Air, they've been super busy with construction this year and this is looking down at the new terminal for the Lift 7. This is the Pine Hill Pump House, and this is our only supply pump house for making snow. So any water that we get to put on the mountain is coming through here, and it's very critical to us. And we did a lot of upgrades there, rebuilding pumps, rebuilding the intakes, and trying to make sure that this was going to be as reliable as possible. We've also replaced a lot more pipe. We targeted the lower mountain, which was always on a reduced pressure zone. So now that we've got the pipe integrity at such a place that we can take advantage of the higher pressures, we're installing our new guns in this section, and it's just going to make us more responsive and more efficient. We also did some upgrades on lifts 6 and 8 in the form of both operator buildings, electrical drives, electrical low voltage systems, communication cables, switches, even transformers. So a lot of improvements to make the operation more reliable. And the building on the right is the former manager's house that we've been utilizing as a administrative center and trying to correct some issues. We did find a lot of mold and a lot of rot that we've been mitigating and trying to turn that into a nice administrative headquarters for that staff. At Gore, if you look in that where that little box is in the inset, that's going to be the entire length of this new beginner lift. And your old beginner lift was about a quarter of the length. So this is going to be a much better learning experience for Gore and all that clientele. So that staff is really looking forward to having this new asset and be able to take advantage of the longer runs to teach people. A lot of our snowmaking and electric improvements targeted the top of the ski bowl. If you remember, Gore is developed on 4 different mountaintops, and the ski bowl didn't have a main snowmaking supply line. It was just a very inefficient way, both for labor and for hydraulics, to get the water to that location. Now we put in a water main line. This is the valve house in process of being built. But each of these lines coming out of there are, have isolation valves and will be charged just when we're making snow to the different sections of the mountain. And that, little concrete vault right in the top of the picture, welder, is where the new transformer will sit. And we've never had electrical power at the top of this mountaintop. So this is going to be a great improvement for the staff and the operation. And with us moving our summer operations to here, it's just going to give us a lot more flexibility. We also extended conduit to tie in our fiber optic communications so that we can have seamless communications back and forth also. And at the ski jumps, did a lot of work on the judges tower, the work on the hill, where the judges want to look at was a little bit awkward from floor 2. So we're moving them up to floor 3. They're going to be able to see across, and they can see both the 100-meter jump as well as the 128-meter jump from that location. We had to evict quite a few raccoons to do this project and have replaced a lot of the electrical and communications with inside of beefy conduits, just trying to ensure the longevity and the functionality of our asset. And then the 2 pictures on the right side are the equipment garage at the top of the ski jump area for the grooming tractors. And just, you know, it's a big single bay garage that'll allow us to rotate the equipment in and out, but take care of this stuff, and a big improvement for this crew. And here's the operations center at the Oval, where we worked with the town and tried to address a bunch of needs. But our the building that was here that we put in was only for ticketing and the rentals. And now that we're doing summer rentals also, we needed a more formal changing area. And we moved that building down to Gore, and it's going to be the ski patrol headquarters at the top of the ski bowl. And we're building a new building here. All the walls are prefabricated. It should go up real quick and serve the needs of the operation at the Oval all year round. And I really wanted to highlight a bunch of the commitments that we've made through the board that are being targeted. A lot of our commitments, if you remember, we struggle with supply chain issues. Nothing's on the shelf, and everything we have is unique. So we had to order a new cable for the gondola at the ski jumps. We had to order a new cable for the gondola at Whiteface. We had to order new grips for the gondola at Whiteface. All those things have arrived, and we're starting to plan for our windows of opportunity to tackle those. You know, there's quite a few projects. We just have to finish installing our tower guns and lift inspections. You know, we have 38 lifts through the organization. This is something that you know, just doesn't happen. This is a real job that we have to bring the Department of Labor through. At the private areas, we'll have to bring insurance representatives through, but we check all the codes, the signage, the safety circuitry and switches. And it's quite a process, but you know, everybody's got it dialed in, and the inspections have started. We're also working at the bobsled track. And at curve 7, we've targeted this, and you know, there's not a lot of bobsled tracks in the world, and there isn't like a blue book you can open up and tell you where to go or what to do. So we had to do a little bit of forensic investigations to try to figure out exactly what was happening. We felt like there were some frost heaves, and over the last couple of years, we've been measuring with precise survey equipment just to see how much it was heaving and where we need to go, and if there is a problem or if there isn't. And, we really, felt like there was a problem, but we weren't sure where, and we had to investigate. But why do you get frost heaves? And it's because the drainage is poor. There's water that freezes and the ice freezes at with more area than, unfrozen water. So the key to construction, the first three most important things are drainage, drainage, and drainage. And in 1999, when this track was built, the luge track was torn down. And the grade on that mountain was adjusted. There was fill in different locations between ledges. And we didn't have good documentation as to how the standards of fill was put in there, how it was compressed, what the drainage was, and why it was open before it was filled. It was probably because there wasn't a good drainage area there. So we felt like it was moist. We dug out a lot of material. And of course, it was challenging because there's pipelines and track infrastructure there. And we kept finding wet soil and wet soil and wet soil. And we put in a tremendous amount of drainage pipe, drainage stone, drainage material, making these improvements. We finally got down low enough, close to, we thought our problem was at curve 7, but we got down closer to curve 8 and we found some deteriorated pilings. And the concrete was popping, and when we exposed them, water ran out. So now I feel really good that we found a problem and we know what to do to fix it now. Instead of just thinking we had a problem and wondering. So the crews are working at that. But and we have a good plan, and we're going to put it all back together. But the reason I'm telling you this is that the track, we went to the board with a resolution a few months ago, and we're starting to do different projects for upgrades. But the refrigeration infrastructure is not 1999. It's actually 1978 vintage. When they built the track, the refrigeration plant stayed the same. So we could try to make an improvement somewhere and have a negative impact or not solve the most critical items. So we're doing a lot of analysis and trying to evaluate and make this happen. But our windows are super short. So we have to be very organized and make sure that we know what we're doing. And it all goes back to that slide I've been telling you about, how we have to take our time, we have to analyze, we have to evaluate. And you're going to be hearing more about the track refrigeration and some track improvements over the next few years. The ski bowl, we've got some, we're ready. We've passed resolutions. We've gone through and are going through engineering. We're starting to do more bidding, letting out different contracts. But this is a multi-year project that a year from now, we'll be finishing up the new electric upgrades and the lift replacement. But it's going to be 2 years from now before we're ready to start using the brand new lodge. And then it's going to be the fall and spring before our summer operations would move back there. And everything just takes time because there's only 3 variables. Again, there's speed, there's quality, and there's price. And we've got the price. We don't want to sacrifice the quality. And it takes time to do things right.
Mike, the zip coaster, how is that compared to what's at Mount Van Hoevenberg?
Well, that Mount Van Hoevenberg's a mountain coaster
Okay.
that's 100% railed
Right,
system.
okay, and then at the jumps?
The jumps, it's some zip lines.
Okay,
Where you're just on a trolley on a cable. This
okay,
attraction that we're going to put in is going to be something that's not going to compete with either of those. It's going to complement them, and it's going to make the Adirondacks more attractive for visitors and give us cross-marketing flexibility, where when you're on a straightaway on this ride, you'll be on a cable. similar to a zip line.
Okay,
But in the zip lines, you're in a harness, where this will be on actually a seat with um, constraints over you.
okay,
And then, but when you're on a curve, it transfers to a rail. And there's actually some 360 helicoils in there on a rail and stuff like that. So it'll be a complementary attraction and a nice ride where we think people will want to do all three.
So it's like an individual seat?
Yeah, it's a single seat.
Okay.
I think we'll name it Wild Ride. Thank you.
Welcome. So the Bel Air Lodges, again, we've been doing a lot of work on the engineering, putting the whole construction documents and bid packages together. We're getting ready to go out to bid. We're I think at the close to the 85 or 90% mark. We're identifying the most critical long lead time items. And, you know, right now transformers are over a year, motor control centers are closing in on 2 years. Even precast concrete's taken a long time. So everybody's struggling and we're identifying what the issues are so that we can be successful. But you know, our team expects to be right back in front of the board here in December, looking to be able to contract the construction so that we can hit our short window of construction between April and November and get some work done next year. Then we would look to button up the projects with some conditional occupancies and then finish them up the following summer.
Could we have an opportunity to look at those drawings at some point?
I'm not sure you're allowed to bid on them, but
No, I definitely don't need to. You don't want me to, Mike. Who would I talk to do that?
but we can get a copy heading your way.
That'd be great.
No problem.
Great, thanks.
The bid package, most of them are electronic. So we've also talked about multi-year projects for snowmaking, and in particular, I want to talk about Bel Air's because it's got so many different variables. We told you about the Pine Hill pump house being critical to the supply. Well, that Pine Hill pump house's supply pipeline is from the late 70s. You know, we have investigated certain areas and we feel that the reliability of it is being compromised and, you know, we should be planning for replacing it. So in this blue bullet at the bottom, it says replacement of the Pine Hill feed line. The higher pressures are closest to the pump house and the closest it gets to the mountain, it's at the lowest pressures. So obviously, if we're doing this in phases, we have to start at the bottom just to take care of the most critical area as far as the reliability is concerned. You know, Gore is looking at the same thing with some of the Hudson River pipelines and in particular, but with Bel Air, it's also complicated because once we're doing engineering now on the new reservoir, the ability to finally increase our pumping capabilities. We've done some dramatic pumping utilization improvements, but our capacities have been limited to what their historic levels were, even though we're utilizing it better and quicker. But we're looking to get greater utilization, and we can't do that till this reservoir is built. But the reservoir will require a pump house, and the construction of the reservoir and the construction of the pump house have not been funded yet. And the pump house power requirements ultimately will go back to that NYSEG substation issue, which is a time frame. So what we're sequencing here, and it is a nice smooth scenario for making us successful with all that administrative permitting, the engineering, the long lead time items, the construction. But we feel that it would take us until the November of 2026 to be able to effectively utilize any enhanced snowmaking capabilities. And again, it goes back to these challenges of labor shortages, supply chain issues, inflation, everything that we battle. But we're doing a really good job of managing projects, identifying these shortcomings and challenges and trying to address them early in the project so that we can be successful. This is going to lead me to these change order resolutions. And this is the restrooms at Mount Van Hovenberg that we had operational last November. We had the one at Whiteface operational last December. Both those were not easy. They came with some additional challenges that were increased in scope, but they weren't to the magnitude of what we faced at Bel Air. And the project scope grew at Bel Air because the prints we were provided weren't accurate, and there wasn't a water line installed where the print said there was. So we had to build a new water line, and then we had to adjust and modify the wastewater lines. And also the water line hit ledge when we were trying to install it. So those were the things where for this resolution, and I think it's 510.
Yep.
Those were the challenges that we faced.
So we're going to go right to the resolution for 510. Could I have a motion to adopt resolution 510? It's a resolution number 445 and granting approval for the president and CEO to enter into amended agreements for the purchase and installation of commercial prefabricated restroom systems at Bel Air Mountain, Mount Van Hovenberg, and Whiteface Mountain.
So moved. Second, Cliff.
Okay, and who was the original motion?
Frank.
Frank. Okay, thank you, Frank and Cliff. So any more additional questions for Mike on the restroom systems?
So I know I had seen firsthand the amount of work that had to be done at Bel Air. So you make it sound simple. We had to deal with the wastewater. It was a very, very extensive digging project and obviously needed to be done. What are the unique things that you have to do at Gore and Whiteface?
It was Mount Van Hovenberg and
I'm
Whiteface.
sorry,
At Whiteface,
a little more simple.
the Department of Health required ultraviolet filter system, which the filter system, we weren't expecting that because we weren't looking to provide potable water.
Right.
And then it created a pressure drop from our pump. So we had to change out some styles of the fixtures. And at Mount Van Hovenberg, the facilities electrical infrastructure for bobsled side and Nordic side had all changed with the new lodge, and trying to tie into backup generation with the bobsled side was a little more challenging than we had expected.
Thank you.
I noticed Derek had his hand up.
Just curious, Mike, the reservoir that's proposed at Bel Air, is it gonna be a lagoon or a tower with elevation so you can maintain higher pressures or something like that?
Yeah, well, we were considering a reservoir with a dam. We went to a reservoir that's just dug, so there's no dam maintenance or engineering or liabilities. But it is below the facility there to get a upper mountain one where we'd use the head pressure wasn't available to us.
Thanks.
There's no further questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. So could I have a motion for to adopt resolution number 511, resolution amending board resolution number 487, and granting approval for the president and CEO to enter into amended agreements for Bel Air Trails improvement projects? And could I have a motion?
So moved.
Frank?
Who was that?
Frank.
Frank, thank you. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Diane. Mike, you want to give us some background?
Yep. Through the unit management plan amendment, we had identified a nice, trail that would not be a black rated trail, it'd be a blue rated trail coming off the middle of, the summit at Bel Air. And that's gonna improve all the access for the skiers. It's a little more extensive than, we were hoping but it's turned out really nicely and, remarkably, I think it's gonna add more character, diversity to the facility. And right now we're installing the snowmaking on it. But it was a little more excavating than was anticipated, just because we added another switch gear, trying to maintain that, lower level pitch and, get in make it as, gentle a trail as possible. And for the, bridge component to access the base of lift 7, we had, our original concept was to do a multi-plate, arch culvert, which was gonna be, fairly inexpensive, but it wasn't available due to supply chain issues, and we weren't gonna be able to get it done this year. And we were looking at the existing bridge in the bottom right, and the characters, I guess, and the aesthetics of those precast building blocks, just trying to make it look nice with a right up near the Overlook Lodge. We want to follow that construction. And you can see how the big difference, though, is that these bridge abutments that are just going parallel with the road, because they're so close to the Overlook Lodge, and we don't want to take up all the real estate in the parking lot. We want it as small as possible. We'll require wing walls, so we'll have those same built concrete building blocks tapering on both sides so that we confine the depth of this construction activity to a width as possible.
So for those like me following on the small screen, it's important to note that these overages will be covered out of the existing capital budget, not asking for new funds here. So it's basically a reallocation within funds that already exist.
Correct. Yeah, many projects get shut down and closed out with funds to spare, and we've tried to keep a contingency fund for unforeseen issues, but so we're not asking for any greater appropriation, but just reallocate the direction of some of these funds to take care of this project.
Am I to understand they're putting fencing in on the new trail? Is that part of this?
In some spots, yes.
Just to keep you on the trail, Diane.
I understand that.
Okay, any further questions for Mike?
Yes, I have a further question. I'd like a little more understanding of, is this another bridge?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a ski bridge so that you can go to access the lower terminal of the new lift.
Okay.
And we didn't want everyone racing around the Overlook Lodge, even though we're making a few improvements there. But that was something that we were mitigating, but through our plans with the ski bridge.
And from Overlook, how do you get to the new lift?
Right down.
Because you go down around the side.
So mitigate the problem of going behind the,
No, it helps. So we had a really serious congestion issue and safety issue around the east side of Overlook because it was all we had. So now what's going to happen is Mike's description of it is that it helps people get to that lift. My description is it helps distribute people better in general. I think it does both. So originally, one of the things they did had nothing to do. They just moved the first snowmaking of the year, a trail over, which was brilliant because it trained people to spread out a little more. Now what we'll have is we'll still have that space, although there's more space now, not as congested because the bottom of lift 7 isn't there anymore. Now we're going to have where the bottom of lift 7 was, it's a bridge and it's going to help spread it out and drop it down. And there was concern about people dropping onto a spot where you have skiers getting off the beginner lift. And then there's also concern about the fact that the mountain programs all gather right there. But this kind of drops right in the middle.
Right, no, but
So-
I'm just thinking about everyone coming out of Overlook. They're not gonna go up to 7, they're gonna go down.
They're going to go down to 7.
So, but that's still going behind Overlook, because they usually leave their skis up top.
Yeah, that's a viable option to get there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right, because they're not gonna want to go climb up to go down the bridge.
Right. Correct.
Right, but so that's still gonna cause them to go around the back
Mhm.
of Overlook, so
Yeah.
that area is still.
There
gonna be-
still is,
But they won't have to
Traffic.
compete with everybody else that's
there
going.
will be less traffic.
Right, but
There will be less traffic.
there's still gonna be congestion there.
Oh, yeah.
Lot of it.
I think it's gonna be, I've been up there to check it out because it's something that a lot of people are concerned about, and I think it's set up pretty well.
Thanks. We don't try to do improvements to have a negative impact.
That's a fine idea.
So is the intent to create two forms of distribution off the top of the mountain? Like to get over the road?
Well, there's only 2 blue trails at the top of the mountain historically, one on the east side, one on the west side. So anybody in the whole middle section, and of course, it isn't a peak, it's a,
Ridge.
flat top,
Yeah.
ridge. So anyone in the middle wants an intermediate or a lower level experience than the Black Diamond has to hike to one end or the other. So there's a lot of challenges, especially when you're in groups. And this is gonna, the new trail's gonna give everybody an opportunity to go down a blue rated trail
I
in the
got you.
middle of the mountain also.
And so that's what
And
will facilitate getting to.
And historically, off of the top, it's a steep drop, and then it starts to run out. Where through the steep top, we did a series of switchbacks that maintain a lower level of the grade.
Gotcha.
Ran into a little more rock than you expected?
Yeah,
I told.
who's gonna think that?
For nothing. Okay,
It's gonna be good.
are we ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to resolution 512. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved, Cliff.
Cliff, thank you.
Second,
Seconded by Ellie. A resolution committing capital and granting approval for the president and CEO to enter into agreements for the purchase of diesel fuel. Mike, tell us about diesel fuel.
Sure. So we've reduced our diesel fuel dramatically, as the graph shows, but the price fluctuates. We shop it hard, trying to get the best deal. There isn't a state contract in some of our zones. So we try to piggyback on other contracts or else get a state contract at the port and pay a transportation surcharge. Potentially, it's very likely that this wouldn't need board approval, but last year we came to the board just to be forthright and transparent, just in case it happened. But we're doing the same thing this year. We're looking to shop for a supplier for the Essex County facilities, a supplier for Gore and Warren County, and a supplier for Bel Air and Ulster County. And This is just a resolution to allow us to do that.
So in your experience, I know there's no perfect time to try to bid on diesel, but would you say in your tenure, which is lengthy, shopping for diesel is better in August, September than other times, or is it's hard to say that?
I don't know,
Just
typically
trying to help Ashley
uh,
for the future, like when,
with the diesel, we're getting a cost of the port, so, and then paying a surcharge, so it doesn't seem to be a benefit.
Now, typically the way it works is most of our diesel is off-road diesel. There has not been an OGS centralized contract for off-road diesel as far back as I can remember. So what we typically do is there is a OGS centralized contract for on-road diesel, and really the only difference between the two is the tax. So once you remove the tax, it's all the same. So what we've been able to do is with the OGS centralized contract, when the bidder puts in their initial bid, it creates an index. And then there's actually a posting every Friday that adjusts that up or down depending on what they're paying at the port. So we tie into that. So it's a continual up and down. It's not a fixed price because no one would give us a fixed price. We'd probably lose at a fixed price. So it changes week to week. It's just a function of establishing what the index is going to be. Ulster County, there's usually a contract that works good, at least as a basis. The same thing down in Warren County. Up here, there has not been a supplier awarded a contract for Essex County for the last 3 years. And I understand there is going to be one finally for this year.
so my experience with diesel has been obviously I don't buy in the quantities that you do, but that typically the farther you go into the winter, the higher the rate gets. And
It makes sense because storage is diminished, but when.
but there's no way to lock in September or August.
Not that we feel would want to recommend.
Okay. Fair enough.
The only way we'd be able to do that, Art, would be a trial basis. We'd have to try it for a year and then look at what we ended up paying as compared if we had paid the fluctuating rates.
When do we typically use the most amount of diesel?
Well, right now, you know, without doing it for diesel compressors, the most grooming is actually probably in February and March. But with the construction in the summer, you know, that most of that equipment's diesel too.
Yeah. Okay. No easy answer.
And again, you can see how much we've reduced it over.
No, and that's tremendous, and that's what we're all excited about and supporting, but it's kind of like the world. We can't all just go electric. We gotta
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
So,
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Could I have a motion to adopt resolution 513, a resolution committing capital and authorizing the president and CEO to enter into electricity supply agreements for Bel Air Mountain, Gore Mountain, and Whiteface Mountain?
So moved.
Second, Betty.
Okay, moved by Diane, seconded by Betty. Mike, a little background on electricity.
Yeah, so last year, we weren't successful in finding a real great rate. Typically, the soft spot in the market is in October timeframe. Our contract, we entered into a 1-year agreement last year, starting January 1st. So we want to have the authority because when prices are presented to us, they're good for sometimes 24 hours and sometimes only 12. But if we see a great opportunity, we want to jump on it. We've looking in pricing different suppliers at Gore and Whiteface. We require consolidated utility billing so that we can apply our solar credits to it. And it's the same resolution that was passed last year.
Questions for Mike? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. I think that brings us to resolution 514. Could I have a motion to adopt resolution 514, committing capital and authorizing the president and CEO to enter into agreements for the Olympic Authority for 2023 and 24 program of insurance?
I'll move it, Betty.
Moved by Betty. Can I have a second? Someone?
Seconded.
I'm sorry. Is that Frank?
Yep.
Thank you, Frank. So we talked about this in the governance committee report, but if there's any further questions, we have staff here who would happily answer them.
Yeah, I think the big things are value of our assets have continued to increase. The revenue we generate at our town-owned facilities where we purchase the extra policy of insurance is increasing. And the market's highly volatile. We did a third-party evaluation of our buildings to make sure that we were assessing the appropriate values for new construction, and philosophically are purchasing the insurance at 100% value of reconstruction of these assets.
And how often is our broker looked at? Like, do we use the same broker for an extended period of time, or do we have to
We have been, it was, I think 2 years ago that we did our last search on it.
and how often do we do that?
I don't know if there's a set time.
We don't have a set time period. We have, so under the
Special.
statute, and under the statute, our enabling statute, we are authorized to contract for insurance in any process that we think works best for the authority. We have, however, looked at our broker, and was it last year or the year before that
2 years ago?
2 years ago, we looked at the other options out there, including going through the Office of General Services with their program of insurance. And our broker is someone who knows the ski industry very well, knows the industry that we work in very well, and we made a determination at that time we were doing as well with him, if not better, than we would be doing by going with another service. We also put into place through him the TULIP program of insurance that we have now that gives us the ability to insure small things going on at our venues in a manner that's efficient and cost effective. So we are confident that we're providing the best value for the authority through our broker and the way that we procure insurance.
And this is the last year we're impacted by the claim from the Whiteface fire in 2019. But it is a volatile market, and our assets continue to appreciate.
So
I think
next time we won't have to put that picture up.
Yeah.
Just have one question.
Betty,
The Gore Mountain is more expensive. It's National Grid, but that price, that's just for what we have to buy after we have the credit for all the solar?
Correct. We were, the way that the solar credits work is we have to purchase our electricity and then we can apply our credits to it. So it's very incumbent upon us to shop for the best deal, not to try to just skate and think that the credits will do it because we don't have 100% solar. It's a percentage of it.
Right, but NYSEG is so much cheaper because they're buying it from NYPA, right?
And Gore is in Zone G, which is the capital district, and it's the most expensive zone in New York State.
I live in it, yeah. It's good to know, right?
I would just make a comment that there's a perception that ORDA is a self-insured because it's a state agency. And I just want to explain to those that that's why you talked about earlier, town of North Alva owned facilities, we need to insure. And that's why we have to get liability insurance.
Good for the public to know that clarification.
Yes.
Any of the facilities that do not sit on state land are not self-insured, and we have to have liability insurance there. Under the statute, for our facilities that sit on state land, we are self-insured through the Court of Claims Fund
Great.
for liability.
Thank you.
Further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. That concludes the business of today's board
We got a
meeting.
little more.
Well, I was going to say, is there any other items?
I just want to reinforce again, we're talking about spending or investing money and, buying diesel fuel and electricity and all the things that we do. But, this report on our economic impact was just tremendous, independent, done through tourism economics. So it shows that right now, annually, we're providing a $342 million economic impact for the state of New York. And the staff have been just doing a tremendous job and deserve a lot of credit for being able to manage our operations, protect our assets, and tell people, sell our services and generate this economic impact. Last Friday, I was recognized with a Community Service Award by the Adirondack Park Institute. And I had a great team of ORDA supporters there from the Olympic Authority. We had Emma Lamy and Peggy Evett, and Emily Stanton and Lori Bennett. And they read a nice letter from our chairman for me, but that was a nice honor, and just wanted to say thank you.
Well deserved.
So I think before we adjourn, we want to all return the thank you, and we'll for the formalities for your retirement party. It is really hard to pile on enough accolades or say enough nice things about you, Mike. As I said in my letter, and I was the honorary chair, but I would have gone to that nice event for Mike, except that I had a family wedding in Long Island, which I would have greatly preferred. I don't know if I should say this on the record, actually, to be at Mike's ceremony. It's no secret in my family that I'd rather not be at the weddings, but 37 going on 38 years of service to the state of New York and to ORDA in particularly. And, Betty was saying at lunch today how, public servants get paid to do things. And I recognize that I was paid myself for many, many years by the state of New York, but it's those who go above and beyond, the old cliche, above and beyond the call of duty. And Mike, you devoted a vast part of your life to improving everybody's well-being in the North Country in so many different ways. And it's just been a remarkable career. The last 6 years as CEO and president have clearly been extraordinary and under incredible duress. Couldn't be more difficult conditions to deliver a $600 million capital construction program in the middle of a pandemic, keep all the facilities open to the public at the same time. And, I will, forever get a kick out of, the stories you tell, the anecdotes, your sense of humor through every situation. I've told Michelle many times, I wish I was writing every one of them down because it would make a great, table or a coffee table book of Mike-isms. And I said it in my letter, I said, everybody recognizes the miracle on ice. And what we've experienced is the miracle by Mike.
Absolutely.
And
We got a great team. It's more
I
than me.
know, I know. And well, that's part of it, Mike. That is a big part of it, is assembling the people around you. Obviously, Hercules couldn't do what has been done over the last 6 years. It took a team, but you assembled that team. And that's as much to your credit as all the other accomplishments that, we place at your doorstep, because you delivered them and your team delivered them. You got a great group of people. We're all saddened by your departure, but really happy for you, because I think this is going to be, I know you have a lot more to give, because that's just your nature, whether it's, building out your daughter's kitchen halfway across the country and driving straight through on the way back to get right back to business at ORDA, or canning, tomatoes. You are, you're a true Renaissance man, but I say that the Renaissance part of it is being able to put all of the amazing pieces together that it takes to operate a facility like all of ours at ORDA. To talk about, to be an expert on soils, hydrology. I was totally struck when he said how happy he was when he saw where the water was coming from the footers at the bobsled run. I mean, I see that. It's like when you figure out the problem, it's like the happiest day of your life. Nobody I know pops champagne when they figure out where the water's draining from. Well, Mike does. He pays that kind of attention to all these details, and it's putting them all together to deliver a product that is, second to none. So, and I will say, if you had a hint, I think today, because of Ashley's participation, of the seamlessness of this transition. Ashley picked right up where Mike left off, and I think she is going to do an extraordinary job. Needless to say, large shoes to fill in, all of that. But Mike has been, again, with his staff, has been tremendously generous of their time. They've been feeding more information to Ashley in the last, couple of weeks than is probably, humanly possible. And hopefully she's absorbed a lot of it, but I know it's been, it's been baptism by fire. So I want to.
She's been drinking through the snowmaking hose.
Says I go.
And
The Mikeism.
mountain where the pressure is the highest.
There's a mechanism, there's another Mikeism for you. Drink.
So I just want to extend my personal thanks. Our relationship goes back many years when I began, skiing at Gore with my son, who was then in high school, and now he's like 7 years old and in the Coast Guard station in Hawaii. But Mike was always generous there and always took us out on the tour to tell us what was going on at Gore, because he was proud of it. It was, Gore was part of his family, and then everything became part of his family. So I just want to extend my personal thanks, and also a warm welcome to Ashley for an organization that has been left in the best possible condition it could be left in. Thanks to you.
I'd just like to add to that just a little bit, because
You're free to, because we have one thing coming up after.
is Gore Mountain, and always will be, thank goodness, but he has been able to go from Gore to the entire program of all the ORDA facilities. And I think one of his greatest assets is he gets at something and how quickly it gets done. And we have seen that in each of these projects. I mean, who could have spent this much money in that short a period of time other than Mike? That's a lot of money.
Invested.
I know, but you had to,
To spend.
it is, but you had to
Yes.
know where to spend it, and you sure did.
And Betty, I'll take that and flip it and say, having had to do projects in the public sector, seeing how he set those projects up to spend less money always amazed me.
Yes,
So you spent well or invested well, depending upon how you want to look at it. But you also saved well, and it was very noticeable to me. So
and Gore, or the whole ORDA is in a better position than it was when you became chairman and CEO of it. you have found ways to reduce costs and increase revenue at every turn. And it's probably the only organization that COVID was helpful for, other than golf courses. But part of
And I will add, needless to say, that at the sort of, one of the things that has been most important to me, and it was obvious from my earliest interactions at Gore, is the commitment to environmental protection, sustainability. He wasn't always looking for just the cheapest way to do it, but the most environmentally benign way to do it. Constantly looking to save water, save energy, convert from diesel to electric. I think that has always been at the sort of the core of everything you've done. And I want to, that's once again, I deeply appreciate that on a personal level. So, but I have a motion to adjourn if there is nothing left for it.
So moved.
I'll second it. It's Cliff.
Thank you, Cliff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The meeting is adjourned at 2:25 on the 2nd of September, 2020. Thank you all for coming. I want to have one more post-meeting announcement, is that we have a birthday celebration today for Diane Monroe. She's, I think, 49 or 50. And you are all welcome. Okay.